Greetings, nerds and fellow Trekkers. This is Will Polk, host of Cine Nerd Presents Blur Trek and co-host and producer of the Cine Nerd podcast with our host, Sarah Beaumont. Thank you so much for joining me this week, as this week I'm going to be breaking down and reviewing Star Trek Strange New Worlds episode 2.5, Charades. This episode was written by Catherine Lynn, who is also a writer on Star Trek Lower Decks, and by co-showrunner Henry Alonzo Myers. It was directed by first-time Star Trek director Jordan Lynn. You may recognize some of her work as director of episodes of Schitt's Creek. I'll also be giving an update on the impact of the SAG-AFTRA strike on the Star Trek panels coming up at San Diego Comic-Con, and also what it may mean for future productions. So this is a spoiler review, so giving you a spoiler alert now. If you haven't watched the episode, stop now, go watch it, and then come back and watch the review that I'm about to give for this week's episode, and also for the update on San Diego Comic-Con. So to quickly set up this episode, the Enterprise is in the 40 Arandani system where Vulcan is located. They're there to do a survey mission on one of the Vulcan moons. Also, Captain Pike ordered the ship to go at sub-impulse speed because he wants the crew to get some much-needed downtime. And so, of course, while they're doing that, Chapel is going to be interviewing with the Vulcan Academy because of the fellowship that she's interested in pursuing. So she's getting quizzed by all her crewmates, except for Spock, because they have some weirdness between them right now. But of course, since they are also there to do the survey mission, she and Spock are assigned to do the survey together. They go there, they run into an anomaly. Spock and Chapel both get injured. They wake up on the Enterprise. Chapel's fine, but Spock is clearly altered, and all parts of his Vulcanness has been removed. And of course, we were just left with the fully human Spock, which leads to all kinds of comedic and dramatic mayhem for Spock. T'Pring is also going to be visiting the Enterprise because since they are in the Vulcan system and her parents want to push ahead with a Vulcan engagement dinner, there's that aspect of the show episode as well. So as I noted, because of all those things, we get a very, very fun and very deep episode about our science officer, Lieutenant Spock. So my overall thoughts on this episode is this week's episode is Star Trek Strange New Worlds take on the split characters that we've seen throughout Star Trek in the past, whether it's in the original series with Captain Kirk and the Enemy Within. We've seen it in Next Generation with Second Chances with Riker, with the transport incident, and so on and so forth. So we've seen this all throughout the lore. And so whenever you have these separations, they can go one of two ways. They can be in a very comedic turn, or they can go in a very dramatic turn, or they can go a blend of both, which this week's episode on Star Trek Strange New Worlds, I would say this was a blend of that comedic and also dramatic with that, because with this episode this week, it's really the first time that we've seen the truly full human Spock on display. We've had situations in the past, clearly, where Spock, due to some outside alien influence or things that have happened, where he has allowed for, and even situations where he has allowed for the Vulcan suppression of emotion to wane or be stripped away because of those outside influences. But in all those cases, we still had the half human, half Vulcan Mr. Spock. But here in this episode, the Vulcanness and all the things that allow him, as far as his Vulcan training, his Vulcan DNA, etc., all that's been stripped away. So now we're left with a fully human Spock. And we see that from both from obviously the physical standpoint, but also the emotional and maturity and everything else standpoint as well. So I really, really enjoy that exploration of that here in this episode. And it's really a fun episode. And I will say, just before I get into deeper into all the various character moments for Spock, Chapel, Captain Pike, etc. This is a fun episode, and I like the pacing that the season has taken so far. Each week, Stranger Worlds has continues to build on itself, and the pacing is really good, and that mixes things up. One week we'll have your dramatic. Last week we had a lot more action adventure whenever we were on Rigel 7. And now we're having this week a more of a comedic episode. So overall, great episode. Definitely want to get into some more details about some of the highlights that I saw this past week. So turning to the episode, let's just jump off with Spock, and kudos to Ethan Peck for the tremendous acting job he did this week. He's really making the case for me as far as being my 1A as far as Spock. Of course, Leonard Nimoy is always going to be the GOAT, but this episode really allows for Peck to dive deep into his portrayal of the half Vulcan, half human Mr. Spock. And it's very important to remember that, because this episode really dives deep into the human side of Spock after the accident, and it's really set up very well, because at the beginning of the episode we have all those traditional Vulcan things that we are familiar with, such as when they're sitting there in the bar and Ortega says it's a joke and Spock replies it's fascinating. The funny moment between Kirk and Spock there with the OCD and in the briefing, and he sees the crumbs on the table and he gets up and cleans them off. But because he has that Vulcan ability to suppress emotions, he didn't act out like we saw later in the episode. So that, and then of course the really funny moment between Pike and Spock when they were making dinner, with the whole conversation of the nasal suppression, where he couldn't smell the herbs because he has this, and because he was, Spock being Spock, he was just trying to be polite to his captain and just say, look, humans are very hard to be around because of how we smell. So things like that were, and of course, whenever they went on the mission, all those kind of things were, the Vulcanness was set up super well, so that when after the accident and when we get the reveal that now Spock is fully human, it really works, because now we can really explore with Spock, and Peck is able to portray these things as Spock, as far as he's free to let loose within reason. And I like the way it was, and Ethan Peck and Jordan Cummins, the director of the episode, talked about this. If you want to go check out the Seventh Rule podcast, they get to some of the background as far as playing these scenes, and levels of like how 1 to 5 as far as how much to how to play things. And it really works, because yes, he's allowed to let loose, but it's allowed to do so in a very Spock way. And so so we have those moments in from the initial what the bleep, whenever he sees what's happened to him, from then allowing the OCD to run amok and really wanted to rip Sam Kirk's head off because he didn't clean up after himself, to the and many other things. I mean, then overindulgence in bacon, getting the joke whenever Ortega stole it the next time. All those things really worked in this episode because of the setup they did at the first end, but also the proper direction and the proper acting from Peck in showing these things with Spock. So those are all fun moments as far as the comedic aspects. From the dramatic aspects, of course, we awkward attempts in it, so comedic and dramatic as well, with trying to help out Chapel after she is dejected because of how the interview went with the Vulcan Academy. Whenever he first sees his mother, trying to hold things back, and the nonverbal acting there in the transporter room was really critical with the facial tics and all that kind of stuff. So all those, when he's trying to pretend that he's still proper Vulcan Spock, but of course the mother always knows. But then also when we get to the his interactions with the Pring, and the fact that she saw that he wasn't looking well, but he didn't disclose it to her. And then we get the engagement dinner and all the things that transpired with it. So really, that was not only the comedic aspects of it for Spock, but also the dramatic aspects of it, and having to sit there and hear all the things that the Pring's mother was telling him, and then having to having the last laugh, like just like we had in even Star Trek 2009 with whenever he was applying to the Vulcan Science Academy, where pulled off the ears. It's like actually human was able to like do all your silly Vulcan things and endure it. So those are really great dramatic moments. And then of course the big one, which I think as someone watching that, when he talks about his mother, and how resilient she is, and all the thing, when he had that realization, because all those years he's been like trying to be the perfect Vulcan and trying to suppress the human aspect of his personality, but now being fully human, and then seeing, just having a small measure of what his mother has been dealing with for years of living on Vulcan, having to deal with. And then he realizes and really appreciates what she's protected him from, and also appreciates what she's been dealing with, and how that was all played out, and how he shared with her during his during the dinner. And he did it in full display of everyone to show how proud he was of his mother, and all. I love that scene. Really, just amazing work there, and not only from Peck, but also just for the character of Spock in that really strong dramatic moment. So again, this was, it's easy to get caught up in the humor of the episode, but what's really been working really well with these with Stranger Worlds for me is the balance that they have whenever they are telling stories with these characters and going into the character exploration with our heroes. So so then the last thing with Spock before I move to Chapel is, one of the things that he also realized is, as a human, was he and even he finally reconciled that I do have indeed feelings for Chapel, and but at the same time, because I'm honorable and I want to do the right thing, I'm not going to pursue them, at least while I was still engaged to Pring. And so, so he was having to realize and work through those things, and I think being able to be fully human gave him an opportunity to, when he became whole again, and then after he and T'Pring had that conversation, um, he was like, okay, I'm going to try to blend these two worlds. So, so later in the series, as far as TOS and movies and other things, we see how Spock has finally reconciled the two parts of his background. This episode really, like, I guess, gives us the catalyst for how it all, that reconciliation took place over time. And where we, I guess you could say from two parts of Spock, from the part of Spock to where he died in Wrath of Khan, and then Spock moving forward from his rebirth and the search for Spock, and how he relearned things, and having those moments in Star Trek 4, and moving forward as far as his dual heritage. So great episode, great part, great exploration for Spock in this episode, and really sets the stage, for when you watch subsequent series. It gives you more deeper context as far as how we got to the place where that he is when we last see him. I believe it was the Kelvin Star Trek movies in 2009, and then later, and Into Darkness. So that was my thoughts on Spock. As far as Chapel, really great episode for Chapel. Jess Bush is killing it. She's really becoming one of my favorites on this series. She really had a great opportunity to flesh out Chapel, and and again, more nods and Easter eggs to Chapel's history, as far as we learned in the original series of working with Roger Corby, and the archaeological medical stuff that she was into. But also, we then get we see that relationship between her and Mbinga, and we really see how deep it really runs from them working together and serving together during the Klingon War. So we get we get more of that this week. And also, what I really like about this episode, not only from Jess Bush's portrayal, but also from the writing, is that it really fleshes Chapel out, and broadens her more than the character that we saw in the original series, where it was one that was just sort of like, spraying hypo, didn't really have much to do. And then, of course, her feelings for Spock, um, in the original series and all, they really, now they're like exploring that more, and really fleshing Chapel out as a character, and also how honorable she is as a person, in that she knows that even though she has these feelings for Spock, and but for the aliens on the Vulcan moon making her admit it, and even everybody on the ship knows it. I mean, Uhura calls her out on it while they're on the moon. But she was always doing the right thing, because she knows that he was engaged to someone else. And but so but at that same time, she's also hopeful that maybe, if we do get a chance for it to work, let's see what happens. And we do get to see that in the episode. And then the last thing for Chapel in this episode is, of course, what the interview that she was having with Vulcan Academy, and how badly it went the first time. And then, of course, she has the the Moore field experience, and then how she gets to come whenever the Vulcan Academy guy still being a jerk about it. She's like, you know what, maybe she basically tells them to go shove it and take it out, shove it out the airlock, because she doesn't, at this point, they need her more than she needs them. And I love how they did that for Chapel. So, that was another nice nod to sort of her moment, like Spock had in the 2009 Kelvin episode movie Star Trek. She has that moment as well. Turning quickly to Anson Mount. I love him. He's great. The non-verbal acting that he did in this episode as Pike was just, chef's kiss, pun intended. But also just turning to the character itself. It again, this really shows why Spock was willing to throw everything away in the menagerie and the original series, where he took, risked his life, quite frankly, because in the menagerie, because that was the last death penalty on the books, to take Pike back to Talos 4. Because we see this each week in and week out when we have these Spock Pike interactions, and we see why there was such loyalty that Spock has for Captain Pike. But also just some fun moments there where he is able to, he talks about the poor, you feel bad for Pike with the effort he went into to try to make the Vulcan T'Pring's family feel welcome, and and all, and and of course, whenever all the things are going on with the crazy dinner, coming up with charades, again, in and out every moment that Captain Pike has on the show, he's quickly becoming one of my favorite captains, I have to say. Turning to some of the other supporting cast members, great moments, both collectively as an ensemble, but also individually playing off one another. Of course, the La'an Spock, conversation with the feelings and stuff, and the very awkward moment there with Spock realizing that he was getting aroused by his conversations with La'an. Of course, Ortegas, Uhura, La'an, and Una trying to tell Spock how he sounds and how he talks, trying to teach him how, after Amanda, they came up with the idea to do the ruse to try to make him be able to pass for in this engagement dinner, with the added absolutely by Lon at the whenever Spock asks, "That's how I sound." Great moment there. The off-duty time bar scene, where they're laughing. Pike and Una, where Spock was trying to do mind meld. Una saying, "Look, you look constipated." Again, funny moments all throughout the episode. But really great stuff there. As far as guest star thoughts, Amanda Grayson, the actress who plays her, absolutely love what she's doing with it. She really captures the spirit of Jane Wyman. from the original series and then the movies. We first met her in Discovery. Of course, they referenced the Pelia reference again as far as them knowing one another. But she blends the warmth and humanity and that inner strength of having to live among Vulcans. I think it really comes across very strongly in this episode, and the protective nature of being a parent. T'Pring, the actress who plays her, Gia Sandua, has made T'Pring a very well-rounded character in a portrayal, taking what the writers have given her and really fleshing it out, and almost making T'Pring, from the character that we first only saw one time in the original series, and was not portrayed in a very positive light at all, but really turning into one where you almost feel sorry for her and have sympathy for her. And especially you see this with how Spock has quite frankly treated her. I mean, Spock has not been the ideal type of partner that you want, and she calls him out on this. I mean, she says, "Look, after all the things we've been through, you didn't come to me whenever I came on the ship. You went, you engaged with everybody else on the ship to try to get through this engagement dinner with what happened to you, but you never told me until the moment, quite frankly, forced his hand for him to share it with her and everybody else." And so that really gives deeper context for what happens later on in the series, in the original series, especially with the Amok Time, when we learned that she has just developed a relationship with Stan on Vulcan. So I don't know, so of course at the end of this episode, they both agree to take some time apart. Is that time, I guess the thing moving forward, is that time apart basically that they don't ever get back together, and then they're just going through the wedding later on in TOS to just basically to save face and keep the peace, especially after all what this went down. Or they do get back, they do try to reconcile, and but during this time period where we clearly see Spock cooking up with Chapel, but at some point that ends. Maybe during this is the time period that T'Pring meets Stan, and as her mom noted, I mean, there are plenty of Vulcan suitors out there, full Vulcan suitors out there for her daughter. So I think those are some of the questions moving forward that we'll have with this episode. That will have to get resolved. That's left hanging from this episode, I should say. As far as T'Pring's parents, yes, admittedly, they were kind of stereotypical in-laws, potential in-laws, but the actors playing them, the mom, she was like the perfect blend of like the monster-in-law, quite frankly. But also even with her own daughter, we've had moments with our parents where we're just like, oh God, I just can't be around them right now. So that was really, really well done. But also the rudeness and the prejudices that were on display, and poor hapless dad, all those things really made for great comedic moments, but also good dramatic moments as well. Not only just to be, to have it be stereotypical moments, but also making it a very deeper scene. And really exploration of the Vulcan culture. So those were great moments. And then of course we do get the moment at the end where, as I noted earlier, Spock being able to like have his first, I guess his next moment, standing up to the Vulcans, where he has made his decision not to do, not to go the route of the Vulcan Science Academy. At least this universe, well, in both universes that happened. It may, I don't know if it happened the same way in this universe as it did in the Kelvin universe, but in any event, he has that moment where he popped off the ears and says, "Looky here, full human was able to do your Vulcan things." So again, great moment there. I do hope we get to see the T'Pring's parents again, because they were a very fun addition to this episode. So closing thoughts on this episode again. Stranger Worlds continues to take huge creative swings to show, and are very confident in what they're doing with this series. And whenever they're taking creative swings like this episode this week and others we've seen, and really nailing them. I really have to say, I know some people may or may not feel that way, but I think I do. I feel that way. and would love to hear your comments as far as if you agree on that. But it continues to build on the lore, deepen it in a way that respects the canon, but also not locked into it in a way that they're not free to tell their own stories, as I've noted before in my review last week. And they take canonical moments, but they may break them out of our head canon as far as how they went when they may go in a different route in the storytelling and in the shows. But at the end of the day, they do keep those canonical points in the series, even though they may retcon them some or adjust them along the timeline to fit the story needs at the time of the show. So again, really, really love this episode. As I noted before, there are some points that we are still going to have to get answers for. Like, for example, where does Spock and Chapel break up? Do Spock and T'Pring get back together, or this separation continues until Amok Time later on in the in-universe timeline? Also, one thing I just happened to think of too is why does Uhura not recognize who T'Pring is? I can't remember. I know in the original version of the show they had a picture of T'Pring as a child. Can't remember if they in the remasters if they have an adult picture of her on the view screen. So any fans out there, if you can, I'll probably watch it again at some point to refresh my memory. But if you know, drop it in the chat. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well. And then after giving this episode a rewatch, I have to say I will have to give it Charades a 4.5 out of 5 badgies. So I really, really like this episode this week, and hope you did too. But if you did, let me know in the comments. And also, right before we go to the news on San Diego Comic-Con, if you like what you've heard so far here in this episode, drop a like. Make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment, and tell us what you did like, what you didn't like about the episode. And I promise to get back to all the comments. Also, hit that subscribe button so that you hit the notification so that you never miss these Strange New World reviews or any of the Art of Star Trek reviews that I'll be doing, or news episodes, as well as our main show, Cena Nerd, on our Cena Nerd channel and wherever you get your podcast. So with that, I'm going to turn now to the impacts of the SAG-AFTRA strike on the upcoming San Diego Comic-Con. So turning to the latest news, of course, if you've been watching a lot of the entertainment news, you'll know that both the Screen Actors Guild and the Writers Guild are both on strike right now. The Screen Actors Guild went on to strike this past week. The writers have been on strike since the late spring. And it's the first time since 1960 that both guilds have been on strike at the same time. The actors last went on strike in 1980. I believe the Screen Actors Guild went on strike back in the 2017, 2018 timeframe. But both guilds are on strike right now. And of course, this upcoming week, San Diego Comic-Con starts on July 20, and Star Trek and Paramount are planning, and as of this taping, are still planning on being there. So what does that mean for the panels that have been scheduled for the event? So we'll just start off with the bad news. Unfortunately, that means that none of the talent, none of the actors, none of the writers from any of the Star Trek projects, programs, upcoming shows are going to be at San Diego Comic-Con. The Screen Actors rules and even the Writers Guild rules prohibits any SAG member from promoting any work for any network, any studio, streamer, and of course, San Diego Comic-Con is one of the biggest events that's out there. Even Anson Mount, he did go to his Twitter, and I think some of the other actors have as well, who may have been planning on attending the event, have noted that they won't be able to attend the event this week. So that's where things stand with Comic-Con. As far as other things moving forward with the strike and productions for, of course, we do have Strange New World Season 3. We know that's been approved. We knew the Michelle Yeoh Strange Section 31 movie is another project that is kind of in limbo right now because one of the writer strike, but also because of the Screen Actors Guild strike. So we don't know when any of the, of course, the strike may only go a week, and of course, if it only goes a week, then maybe the actors and will be able to return, and assuming that the Writers Guild is also able to get their labor issues worked out, they'll be able to attend as well. But if not, then neither none of the talent, creatives, and production folks will be able to attend the event this upcoming week. So stay strong, writers, actors. Definitely support you guys for what you're doing as far as trying to get a fair shake and a fair deal from the studios. They need to pay you. They're working under antiquated rules, and because of the new streaming world that we're in, those things need to be updated as AI protections and all the other things. I'll drop a link in the chat, the box below, just if you're curious about what the various guilds are asking for. You can look at it there. But moving to what we will have this upcoming week, assuming that, as I said, that Paramount doesn't pull out of San Diego Comic-Con, currently there are still going to be many Star Trek things that are going to be happening. For example, 2 Star Trek panels have been announced, including an overview of Alex Kurtzman, who is the overall executive producer for Star Trek universe, a celebration of the animated series, the 50th anniversary of the animated series. There's going to be a celebration at Comic-Con for that. That's going to be on Friday at 10 a.m. in room 25 ABC if you're at the event. Of course, it will be looking all, hopefully they'll be streaming that at some point on either Paramount's platform or hopefully San Diego's YouTube channel. The Star Trek Universe panel will be on Saturday, July 22nd from 1:30 to 3 p.m. local time in Hall H. So Star Trek will have presence in Hall H, even though we won't have the actors and other people on the stage there. There'll be plenty of things that they'll be able to get into, which I'll speak to next. And then lastly, there is another panel that evening, Boldly Go to the Psychology of Star Trek Picard, hosted by the Arkham Sessions at Saturday, July 22nd, 7 p.m. in room Grand 12 at the Marriott Marquis. So if you're planning on going to San Diego Comic-Con, those are the events that you want to be able to attend. Of course, things that we might get in the Star Trek Universe panel on Saturday. Of course, we still have things that are in the can ready to be shared, including Star Trek Discovery. We'll probably get more information about Star Trek Discovery Season 5. It is currently still planning to premiere in 2024. They were able to get reshoots done and stuff, I think, before either the writer's strike and clearly the actor's strike. So hopefully we'll get some new footage and some images from that upcoming season at SDCC. We'll probably get some more teasers from, of course, current season of Strange New Worlds. We're only halfway through the season we'll be going to episode 6. And also the Thursday after San Diego Comic-Con, we will be getting the crossover episode between Star Trek Strange New Worlds and Lower Decks. So this, to try hopefully build up some buzz, more buzz than the shows already have, given that it's in the top 10 of streamers. We'll probably get maybe some more footage from that upcoming episode with the crossover. We'll also get maybe, speaking of Lower Decks, season 4, Lower Decks should be coming later this year. I think maybe late summer, early fall. So we'll probably get some more information about it, maybe some more teases, maybe some more clips and other reveals at the event. So hopefully we'll get that. So even though we won't hear directly from cast and some of the crew and writers and others from the show because of the respective strikes, there's still a lot of information that's going to be hopefully be able to be shared, and a lot of celebrations, not only for Star Trek but for all comic and content creators at the event. So even though we won't have a traditional Comic-Con with the big announcements and panels with things we've had in the past, where where what we've gotten used to. Comic-Con is still going forward and really being, I guess, getting back to its roots as far as being an event about comics and comic books and other things. So, of course, again, it's great to see that Star Trek will be a part of it. And hope if you are going there, hope you have a fun time. And also, if you're going to Star Trek Las Vegas, hope you're having a great time there as well. Thank you for joining me on this latest episode of Cine Nerd Presents Blur Trek. Follow our crew on Twitter at Cine Nerd and at SNN Blur Trek. Friend us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram and Threads at scene_n_nerd and on our website at www.scenenerdpodcast.com. Our main show drops every Friday, so be sure to check it out. Be sure to rate, follow, and comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Subscribe to us on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Live long and prosper.